with Rob Brown, breaking it all down. Yeah. SEC, sideline sports on my mind. Rob Brown calling game time, highlight shine, executive mind. Brendan Martin keeping Rob in line. Like, subscribe, share it, tell everyone. Sideline sports, y'all come back real soon. Same place, same time, same tune. From the booth to the field, every Saturday feeling you home. We ride that rivalry, make that living room sound like the zone. From Tiger Grouse to Rebel Crowds, every hometown heartbeat loud. Rob and Brand turning up that talk like you right there inside the crowd. SEC, sideline sports on my mind. Rob Brown calling game time.
Morning. Good morning. Get a boost to your day. Share it, like it, subscribe. Rob Brown in Memphis and Brendan down in Ocala, Florida.
100 degrees today.
Well, I think it'll be 73 up here today. Winter
90. It was 90 yesterday.
Wow. Winter disappeared up here. We had 8 inches of snow and ice and sleet and 2.5 weeks on the ground. And then now we're going to, well, it'll do this. We'll be building fires till early May. It's what always happens. But
I'm in shorts and t-shirts. Bro.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be. And the mosquitoes will be back once that rice gets in the ground.
Back.
And they're the size of quarters around here. Look, got a great show today. Jordan Davis Hill, 247 Sports, and the Junkyard Dog podcast. Folks, do yourself a favor. Sharpen your mental skills. Pay attention to what Jordan says. Also, Kevin Scarbinsky, one of, I think, two of the best basketball writers in the South, along with Franz Beard. Franz write that great book, The Golden Season. Kevin Scarbinsky does a show on this channel, Scarbo Knows. You need to watch it. Did a great one yesterday. Auburn's going to ride or die. It wasn't yesterday. Yeah, with Stephen Pearl. Yesterday. And pay attention, folks. Kevin is going to have some great stuff to say, as he always does. And Yancy Porter will check in from Oxford. He hosts, of course, the Rebel Yell Hotline Monday nights in Memphis and all over on Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. So, look, share it, like it, subscribe. Again, we're doing this Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 a.m. Central. Let's bat off our leadoff man in the red and black, Jordan Davis Hill. And Jordan, the luxury of what the beautiful people are doing. Georgia fans don't have to be there till Thursday because Dogs don't have to play Wednesday. I think Auburn's going to play tonight. It's been a rough season, but let's talk about Mike White's. This is year 4, correct? Man, that just flies by. Give them a grade right now. Was it 21 or 22 wins?
Yeah, they won 22 games, which that is a new Georgia record for wins in a regular season. And I mean, that one that tells you the state of Georgia basketball, that's the number to hit. But yeah, I mean, I think for this year alone, Mike White deserves, I would probably give him an A. You know, there were a few games that they let go that they probably should have won. I think about Ole Miss at home. Georgia hit 15 threes and just didn't play a lick of defense on the other end and lost to a team that I think ended up with 4 conference wins. There were other opportunities along the way, but they've done a great job. And this was a team I was talking with some folks over on the Junkyard, our message board. Before the season, I had them around 18 wins. I thought they'd be just out, on the wrong side of the bubble when the season was over, because we were looking at a team that you lose Asa Newell, who's a top 20 pick in the draft, or maybe top 25. You lose Silas Demery Jr., one of your better players who transfers to UConn and has been really, really good for UConn this year. And, I like the players they added in the portal, but I just wasn't convinced it was going to be at the level that they were last year. And I think this team as a whole, I think is better than the team they had last year that finally broke through and went to the tournament for the first time in a decade. So Mike deserves a lot of credit. This was really, to me, the year that was going to determine how the rest of his tenure went. And that was largely losing Asa, losing Silas Demery Jr., losing Eric Pastrana, a guy who coached with him at Florida. He left for Miami. It kind of felt like, if you make the wrong moves, if you don't build a roster that can compete, you could be trending in the wrong direction. Mike deserves a lot of credit. He's done a fantastic job. And I mean, we're talking about the most, sustained success for Georgia since probably Hugh Durham was the coach. I mean,
I would agree with that.
I don't know that we can really say Jim Herrick because there's asterisks now by a couple of his best seasons.
Well, you look at this staff that he's got, and there's always going to be guys coming and going. Recruiting, how he's building this roster, that's impressive. Is he starting to make headways, in your opinion, just in the metro Atlanta area, which is close to 7 million people?
Not really. I mean, they really haven't recruited Atlanta or the state of Georgia super hard. Really, a lot of their success, one, has been with ties going back to the state of Florida. And I mentioned Asa Newell a minute ago. That worked out. It was kind of a two-headed thing of how it worked out. One, Asa grew up, he's like 6, 7, 8 years old in Athens. And then he and his brother and his family moved down to Florida. And that's where Eric Pastrana and Mike White, I think really probably more so Eric Pastrana, kind of had a relationship with them when he was growing up, or at least, early high school kind of age. And then the other thing, and I've talked about this on before, we got a lot of people that are kind of worried about Georgia's high school class for the upcoming season. They haven't signed anybody, but I think they really went into this year and said, look, we've had our most success in the high school part of recruiting after the season. I mentioned Silas Timmery Jr. He was going to go to USC after that basketball season. One of USC's guards decides, I'm coming back for another year. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Silas says, all right, I'm going to look around. He winds up coming to Georgia. Blue Kane is going to go to Georgia Tech. Well, Georgia Tech fires Josh Pastner. Okay, Blue opens it back up. He comes to Georgia. Samto Cyril, who yesterday was named to the SEC All-Defensive Team, he was going to go to Kentucky. He was Kentucky's first commit for John Calipari in that class. John Calipari goes to Arkansas. Samto opens it back up, and he comes to Georgia. So I think that they came into this year and said, look, we're going to really focus on, trying to add high school guys after the season. And now, it was a gamble. If this season doesn't go well, it's harder, I think, to sell those guys on coming to Georgia. But they've had a fantastic season. They're getting ready to go to the NCAA tournament for the first time in back-to-back seasons since 2001, 2002. You got a lot to sell. And I think once they actually, the numbers are in, pencils down on this high school class, they'll probably have 2 or 3 guys that are fairly capable and guys that could contribute next year.
Quickly, we won't stay on it long, but is the Georgia Collective NIL for basketball all in?
I think so, and I think it's a situation you have to understand, how you want to use your resources between football and basketball. But I think what's really helped is you've been able to show results. And I think that this is a year, again, even outside of like NIL stuff, my thing that I've told y'all with other sports is the Field of Dreams thing. If you build it, they will come. I mean, Mike White has shown, if you're going to give me the money and the financials to go build a team, we're going to build a team that can make the NCAA tournament. And I think that's really what is the realistic goal for Georgia basketball year after year. Make the NCAA tournament. I mean, my thing is make the NCAA tournament 2 out of every 3 years. Go 2 out of every 3 years if you're Georgia. So yeah, I think that they're bought in, and it's interesting today. Seeing some reports. I look at a school like South Carolina. It sounds like they're going to probably keep Lamont Paris. And it sounds like, they're saying we're going to give them more funding. I mean, that's really, sometimes it's not firing a coach is the worst thing you can do for them. It's taking away all their money. I mean, I don't think Lamont had very much to work with as far as putting a roster together. I think that Georgia's done a good job of giving Mike White and his staff what they need. And Georgia doing a good job of saying, all right, these are the realistic guys we can go get. I mean, you look at the guys who have been good this year they got from the portal. Jeremiah Wilkinson, a kid from Cal, team that I think won 12 or 13 games last year, a kid from Georgia. Probably the best example is Smurf Millender, a guy from UTSA who had played at South Alabama. These aren't the top of the line, if you were rating the transfer guys, 5-star guys. But Georgia knows how to scout those guys and say, this guy could really work in our system. And for the most part, a lot of those transfers they've gotten have done that.
Yeah. It is so hard roster management And, football, everybody talks about the GM or player personnel director, but basketball, you only have 13 scholarships. Most schools carry 10 or 11, maybe. I mean, I don't know what the roster numbers are at Georgia, but looking at that, Mike White can take advantage too, because, Auburn had been just dominating that Atlanta area, and they're struggling. So, somebody's down, it's an opportunity for you to rise up. So, all right, quickly in Nashville, is there a number of games Georgia must win to get? What's the best possible seed you see them coming out of there with, short of winning the tournament?
I think a 7 seed is probably the highest they can get. Most of the projections you're seeing right now are 8 or 9, but you've seen the number of bracketology experts who have had them as a 7 seed. So, it's hard for me to sit here and say they got to get this. I mean, it's so hard to quantify. But my thought is if Georgia wins 2 games, they should feel pretty good about their chances of being a 7 seed. And their first game is either going to be Texas or Ole Miss. That's going to be the first round matchup. They split with Texas this year, and like I mentioned earlier, they lost at home to Ole Miss. Definitely Georgia's worst loss of the season. And then if Georgia wins that game, they go play Alabama. Now, they beat Alabama last week, but that was in Stegman Coliseum. You're playing on a neutral floor, it might be a little bit different. So my thought is if Georgia can win 2 games in Nashville, they got a chance to be a 7 seed, and that would be huge because right now a lot of the projections have them as an 8-9.
Yeah,
they still need to go win a game. They have not won a game in NCAA tournament since 2002. But if you win it, congratulations. Your reward is you go play a 1 seed. And looking at the way these 1 seeds look, I've been very impressed with Georgia. I don't see them hanging with a 1 seed.
Yeah, that's a tough deal. Go win, and then thank you, sir. May have another. You're facing a 1. That's the NCAA tournament. Okay, so look at what I'm noticing a trend too is you look at Ole Miss with Chris Beard. I mean, they checked out a long time ago, but he's already said, I'm coming back next year. When you go into the portal this heavy and you get a cancer or 2 in your locker room, man, it can sink you quickly, can it?
Yeah, and the biggest thing to me is that, when you remake a roster, you have no idea how these guys are going to gel together. And I think that, that's the gamble you take when you go portal heavy. When you say, I look at a situation like Auburn, and I think a new coach also has to factor into it. But they pretty much have a brand new roster besides Tahad Pettiford.
Yeah.
And I think that just did not gel the way they thought it would, even after what I thought was a solid start, playing really tough competition. But, yeah, I mean, that's really the thing is, you look at Georgia, let's say that, that they make the tournament. Let's say they win a game and they lose. The biggest thing for a team in Georgia's spot, I think, it's kind of like football. It's roster retention. Georgia's only losing 2 seniors off of this team, but plenty of guys that probably will go in the portal.
Yep.
Some other guys who have decisions to make. So you're just in different spots when it comes to that. But yeah, I mean, Georgia's kind of gone into the portal when they absolutely have had to. I don't think they're a team that wants to just start over every single year. And like you said, I mean, I wrote about this earlier in the week. Going back to my preseason SEC picks, the team that I was the most wrong about, I was wrong about plenty of them, but Ole Miss. I mean, I kind of thought it'd be, reload and, build off of a Sweet 16 appearance last year, and that didn't happen. And all of a sudden, a situation that I didn't really think we would see, kind of wondering about Chris Beard, but not Chris Beard getting a better job. Is Chris Beard going to work out in the long run for Ole Miss?
Yeah, and I know Yancy's going to be on it, and he talked about it, but he's got money. They've got it, but yeah, without developing kids, and people aren't going to sit on the bench like they used to would do. So it's a different. Well, I'm not going to let it happen. I'm not going to let an entire segment with you pass without talking some Georgia football. We almost did it, but I got quickly before you go, and Kevin jumps on. Spring practice is underway. Give us a dog report. And what are you talking about on your great Junkyard Dog podcast that everybody needs to watch? And tell them how they can subscribe as well.
Yeah, well, hey, you're jumping the gun. We got a week until spring practice. Let me do one thing at a time between going to Nashville and covering spring practice. But we've got exactly a week before spring practice starts. And Things I'm going to be really interested in is I'll start with the offensive line. They're going to have some big questions. They've got to figure out both tackle spots. They got to figure out what's going on there. I'd say probably more so right tackle, because I think Ernest Green's going to be your left tackle. And, you look to the defense, I really think this defense has a chance to be elite. I mean, they were young last year. I thought that they really got better as that season went on. And, as it is with so many teams, I think the injury bug really hurt them. Losing Gabe Harris for that Sugar Bowl, I thought he had become Georgia's best pass rusher and had been playing really well before they played Ole Miss. So it's going to be interesting. I think I'm going to be bouncing between airports and spring ball. And, I don't know how much Kirby's going to let us watch spring practice, but it's going to be fun. But I appreciate y'all having me back on. Dogs247.com, Junkyard Dogcast is the podcast. We'll do another live one, 12 p.m. Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central today. And yeah, busy time of year. There's probably going to be some writing from some airplanes and some checking in on what's going on back in Athens as I'm following the basketball team. But it's a fun problem to have, and appreciate y'all letting me come on here and talk about it.
Oh, always. And look, more power to the Charger too. I got this battery pack that they gave us all at the Ducks Unlimited dinner a few weeks ago. It's the size of a cell phone. You charge it up, then you can be out in the middle of nowhere. It'll charge multiple phones and go for days. So got to have that. But look, all of you coming up.
Rob's been in the TikTok shop.
Yeah, no, I have not. But they gave them to us, and I took mine, and they really work. But anyway, Jordan, thank you so much. We'll see you next week, and good luck in Nashville.
Thanks, guys.
You bet. Scarbo knows. Kevin Scarbinsky. I was watching that podcast you did last night. Audrey was watching something on Netflix, and she goes, "Would you turn that down?" I said, "It's Scarbo knows," and she goes, "Oh, that's okay." She loves you. She goes, "He's been with us from the beginning, man." But how you doing?
I'm good. A little rundown after doing the pregame, postgame, and halftime shows for 42 high school championship games last week, semifinals and finals, 7 classifications, boys and girls, 56 teams. It's an incredible event. If you love high school basketball, if you love basketball, you ought to come to Birmingham one year just to take it in. You'll see great players that are going to play in college, and you'll see others that will be playing their last high school game and will never play competitively again. And it's just really, really special.
Well, we were down in Fairhope over the weekend to see John Hartwell and Yan Cowart. And I'm going to tell you one thing. That state is on fire right now. Supposedly, Meemaw, the governor, Kay Ivey, is going to let junior colleges play football. And then basketball, we watched the Iron Bowl of basketball at this little, bar. And there was a bunch of Auburn and Alabama fans in there, of course. And, boy, it was weird to watch. And I think your podcast was on point. You always are. And folks, if you didn't hear what Kevin just said, last week he watched 42 high school basketball games. That is true grit journalism.
Just called them though.
Yeah, called them.
Called them. He didn't just watch them.
I didn't call. I wasn't doing play-by-play or analysis. I was the host for the broadcast. So every pregame, postgame, halftime, I was on the air. The toughest part is just familiarizing yourself with 56 different teams.
Wow.
Because that's how many teams start the week. And you have 2 semifinals and a championship game in each classification, boys and girls. And Alabama was the first state to bring every boys and girls team here for the semifinals and finals. Back in 94, I believe, they started doing that. And they alternate girls games and boys games. And it really shines a light on both. And it just, the atmosphere, to see small communities like Asheville, which is in St. Clair County, just fill the gym. I don't think there was anybody left in Coleman or Oxford on Saturday when they played in the 6A boys championship game.
Yeah,
they didn't fill the place, but they had to open up the upper deck. It was just an incredible crowd, and really the crowds were incredible all week.
Well, did you think about getting Hall's lozenges as a sponsor for your throat? I mean, that is so impressive. All right, so I heard and watched the podcast last night. Scarbo knows on this channel. Wow. Stephen Pearl, tough situation he was put into. I'm not making this up. Everybody watching that game down in Fairhope Saturday night was saying, God, his body language, because I said something and everybody said, yeah, he just looks, he's not like his dad. and everybody's different. But man, his father would not micromanage, and he was more encouraging. He was intense. But Steven just looks like, oh, the defeated man. I'm not saying he's Hugh Freeze, but Hugh Freeze always looked like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. There are three things I cannot stand people to be, negative thoughts, late, okay, and that they don't believe they're going to win. And he doesn't look like, and I know he's got some problems on that team, and I want you to get into that quickly. Then we're going to go all over the SEC because you and then Yancy will join us later. But, man, you have a way of getting to the point.
Well, to me, the bottom line is he's learning to be a head coach. And that is a hard task in the SEC right now, because this is something Mark Pope has dealt with at Kentucky. You came into this league as a head coach at the height of this league's basketball powers, when you've got more good teams than ever, more elite teams than ever. Florida won it all last year. Auburn was also in the Final Four. 4 teams in the Elite Eight, 7 in the Sweet 16, 14 in the tournament last year. They're going to get 10, 11 this year in the tournament. Yeah. So that's not really the place you want to learn on the job. And like so many coaches' sons who follow in their father's footsteps, he would have been better off going to coach at a Middle Tennessee or somewhere in a mid-major. So you make your mistakes out of the spotlight. He didn't have that opportunity, so he's got to figure it out on the fly. And the people who say, and I'm going to defend Steven here for a second, the people who say, oh, he inherited a Final Four team. No, he didn't. No. He inherited one player from a Final Four team. One player in Tahad Pettiford, who had to play a very different role this year. Last year, he was the little brother just having fun with his big brothers. He could come in off the bench. He could light it up and score a bunch of points in a hurry. This year, he's had to take on more responsibility, and he hasn't always been up to the task. And then you bring in a lot of other players that just haven't meshed well. Auburn's gone from having the best chemistry, some of the best chemistry I've ever seen on any team in any sport a year ago, to having some of the worst. And that is a problem. They're talented enough to beat just about anybody. You beat Florida in Gainesville. You beat St. John's on a neutral floor. You beat Arkansas. They have quality wins. The problem is the chemistry is not good. They don't like each other. And I'm not saying this is universal, that every player dislikes the other. It's not 25 players, 25 cabs, like they used to say about some Major League Baseball teams. Yeah. But there are guys that don't like each other. There are guys that don't like the coach. And I said this on my podcast yesterday. Someone who talked to an Auburn player early in the season, the Auburn player said, and this is a good player, this is not someone who's a problem, this is not someone who creates issues, said, we didn't sign up for this. We signed up to play for BP, who is Bruce Pearl, of course. And so there's that. I wonder how much of a sense of resentment there is that coaching change took place the first day of practice, and the players didn't really have a chance to go anywhere else. Where were you going to go at the end of September? There were no roster spots available at comparable programs. So that's what Bruce Pearl did. He not only locked in Steven as the head coach, he locked in the roster for the year. And then they overscheduled for that roster. It's a bad combination, and that's why they've fallen off the way they have.
Yeah, but I've seen – I said this early on. I said, well, he put Auburn in a no-win situation. And Matt Dean talks on this show so much about just even at the D3 level, the 18 inches moving left to that head coaching seat is a monumental shift. It is so big. And if you're going to make your mistakes, if you have to make them under the microscope of Auburn, the SEC, it was a no-win deal. And I'm with you. You can tell these players are not all as one. There's no Dylan Cardwell. There's nothing. And I also think that a player like Todd Pettiford, if they really want to go and they struggle, you got to let them go. We all remember the girlfriend, if it was meant to be, it'll be. Let her go. She wants you, she'll come back. Same thing with dogs and cats, I just, nothing about this team makes, and I want, if you're a fan, you want to see Auburn win. But it's tough.
Well,
it's a tough. Yeah, Steven, I don't know him. You do. but he was put in a horrible situation. So you're going to have to see, like you said, next year.
And I'll say this. He does understand that though he has a 5-year contract, he does not have a 5-year window to prove himself. I've heard him say he really believes he has about 2 years, which means one more year, to prove to people that he is capable of doing the job at the level it should be done. So his window has tightened to get that done. I believe he'll get next year, and he should get another year. I think it's foolish people suggest. I've heard Auburn fans suggest, look, cut the cord. It's not working. We've seen enough. That would be a mistake because Stephen, this is not his roster. Bruce was the head coach when they put the roster together. Yes, Stephen was a part of it. He was the associate head coach, but he wasn't the head coach. So Bruce was primarily responsible for the roster and the schedule. And that's why I say Bruce bears some responsibility. I would like to hear Bruce Pearl, who loves to talk. We all know that. I'd love to hear him take some responsibility for this Auburn season. When it's all said and done, and probably now is not the time, but when it's all said and done, when they lose, whether it's in the NIT or the NCAA, and for Bruce to offer some reflection here and say publicly that he put Stephen in a difficult position. Yeah. And I don't know that he'll do that. I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah, well, I live by a motto. It's pretty simple. Stay out of politics, stay in production. Okay? Your basketball coach. And that would help. But you're right. I love that.
Bro, you're not putting that genie back in that bottle, Rob, with Bruce Pearl. You know that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just what it is. Kevin, let's look around the SEC. I mean, it's Florida ran away with the title a while back. Todd Golden, hell of a coach. I mean, I know he and Stephen Pearl are friends. That's it. They're completely different as coaches so far, but Todd Golden went out and coached at San Francisco. He'd been around a while. I'm a big fan of his. I like his style, the way he coaches. Another one that I'm kind of impressed with is Dennis Gates at Missouri. 2 years ago, remember at the end of the season? Yep, they're going to do it. They have done it. 0-18 in the SEC. And look at them now. Got a couple of 7-footers on that team. Nobody talks about Missouri. Will you?
Well, Dennis Gates is a proven head coach.
Yeah.
And again, he did it at a mid-major before he got to the SEC.
There you go.
And I think that's so valuable for a coach's progression. I think he's one of the better coaches in the league. And you guys know what I think of Bucky McMillan. I've known Bucky since he played at Birmingham Southern. And his career philosophy always was he was never going to be an assistant coach. And this is going to sound silly, but he was coaching when he was in high school. He was coaching summer travel teams. And I've had long conversations with him about this. All the things that you have to learn to do as a head coach, when to call timeout, when to substitute, when to change defenses. He's been doing that for 20-something years. Now, it was out of the spotlight. It was in gyms, hot gyms in the summer across the Southeast with travel teams before he got the Mountain Brook High School job. But he made his mistakes when very few people were watching, and he learned how to become a head coach.
That's right.
And that's why he's successful. I thought he could have been, if they had won, a marquee game or two, they didn't play the greatest non-conference schedule, and they didn't beat the better teams in the SEC. I thought he had a shot at being SEC Coach of the Year because they were picked 13th in the league, and they tied for 4th. Yeah. And they're going to go to the NCAA Tournament, despite losing the entire roster. He had to put together an entire new roster after he got the job. He was the last Power 4 coach to get Power 5 coach in basketball to get a head coaching job. And the portal had been open for a couple of weeks, so he didn't have the pick of the litter. Those guys all are among the better coaches in the league. And that's another thing. If you're Stephen Pearl and you're a first-time head coach, you're coaching against some of the best in the business. And Todd Golden is as good as it gets right now. And people, we talk about Coach of the Year. People say, "Oh, well, they were picked first, right? They've got the best talent. They should." How many 5-stars are on that roster? Boogie Fland, I think in 1 or 2 services was a 5-star, not a consensus, but he developed those guys. First of all, he identified those guys: Thomas Houck, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu. Those guys now are not what they were when they got to Gainesville.
Correct.
That's coaching. That's development. And you talk about chemistry. You watch those guys play, and look, it's fun to win, right? It's fun to win by 20, 30 on a regular basis. but they just enjoy playing with each other. And you could see it even at media days. I said this, Ruben Shinyulu could be a diplomat. He could be an ambassador. He could be a prime minister. He's one of the most engaging people I've ever interviewed in recent years at SEC media days. And you see it in his face. You see the joy he plays with, the effort. You see the intensity that those guys play with.
Yeah.
That there's something special about that bunch. You talk about chemistry, they've got it. And that's why, guys, I don't care what the bracket looks like. I don't care who they're matched up with. I'm going right to the end of the bracket to start when we get it on Sunday. I'm putting Florida in as the national champion, no matter who they play. That's how much I believe in that team.
Yeah, I rode Florida last year.
Too.
I predicted they would play Houston for the national championship, win by 3. I don't have a crystal ball, but that was as close as I've been in a while. But I'm with you. Those guys love and care about each other. And if you don't have buy-in on a team that you're in, have each other's back, it's obvious. Okay, so looking around the conference, and you just let her rip, who are some teams that you think have got to win in Nashville 2-3 games to get into the tournament or to improve their seed? We already talked about Georgia maybe going to a 7 or 8, because if you're an 8 or a 9 and you win, who do you play? Number 1.
Yeah, you don't want to be a 4 or a 5. You don't want to be an 8 or a 9. Yeah. You want to hold off on playing the 1 seed in your bracket as long as possible, because the 1 seeds, once again, as they were last year, look really, really strong.
Yes.
And Florida's going to be one of those 1 seeds.
Yeah.
So that's why what Alabama has done down the stretch, winning all the games that they've won, they're on the 3 line right now, and I think they'll stay there most likely. So that way you don't play the 1 seed till the Elite 8. Mm-hmm. Alabama can make a run. And you talk about coaching. Nate Oates has done, I don't know if a lot of people don't, let's just start with this. A lot of people don't like Nate Oates for different reasons. But he is as good a basketball coach as there is in the SEC. I'd put him right up there with Todd Golden. Yeah. You can't beat Todd Golden, so maybe we got to give Todd the edge there. But Nate's had more all SEC first teamers than anybody since he's been in the league. He's had 7. I think Florida's had 6. Arkansas and Auburn are right behind with 5. Tennessee's right there. They may have had 5 or 6. But what they've done with a guard-heavy lineup and really only one true big in Aiden Sherrill has been pretty spectacular. And I think they're dangerous, and I think they'll make another run in the tournament. They don't have to do much. They don't have to do anything really in Nashville. They're in the tournament, and I think they're pretty much solidified as a 3. But you look at a team like Kentucky. Kentucky needs to win. Just for the psyche of the Big Blue Nation, first of all. For those people who are ready to run Mark Pope out of the state, those people that embraced him when he got there because he's a former player who played on their 96 national championship team. But that team, I don't know what's going on with that team. They're talented enough that they've won big games, but there's something missing there. And I think part of it is Mark Pope's coaching, in-game coaching. He's got a long way to go to be one of the better coaches in the country when it comes to making game time decisions. Yeah. They've got to win some games. Auburn clearly has to win some games. They might have to get to Saturday. Yeah. It depends on what's happening with the rest of the bubble, which is really weak. And Auburn has an advantage because they've got quality wins that other bubble teams don't have. Yeah. Who else? Tennessee's interesting to me. Yeah. Obviously they're in the NCAA tournament. That's not a question for them. But how healthy is Nate Ament going to be? He's such an important player for them. He's so explosive. Saw him score 29 against Alabama in Tuscaloosa when he was healthy. Of course, he had that unfortunate injury against Alabama later in the season in Knoxville. That's a team to watch because they play the kind of game that will win you games in the NCAA tournament, but hasn't proven to be able to get you to the Final Four. Rick Barnes hasn't gotten the Vols there. The Vols have never been to the Final Four, which is kind of surprising when you think about how successful their program's been over time.
Yeah, it is. And the conference as a whole, we go last year, record year, 14 teams, only 2 that did get in last year, South Carolina and LSU, and they're just continuing down their death spiral. It is awful to watch. And again, I agree with Kelly Leak asked this question on this comment thread. How many of these Auburn players will be back next year? Hopefully none of them. It's my opinion.
No. Hold on. Tap your brakes there, Rob.
I'm kidding. But
Sebastian Williams-Adams, you want him back.
Yeah.
Elijah Freeman, you want him back for sure. Kevin Overton could come back.
Yeah.
And I think he has matured and really stepped up down the stretch. I think he would be an asset to bring back. I would be surprised if Pettiford comes back. I don't know that. I'm not reporting that.
Yeah.
That's just my instinct tells me he might be better off going somewhere else. But you'll have just a small group of players come back. And again, you're going to have to rebuild a large chunk of that roster. And now we'll find out more about Stephen Pearl as a personnel manager, which you have to be as a head coach as well.
Yeah, and I do think he deserves another year because of the situation. And you wait until the first day of practice and you drop this bomb, it's time. And it was all about Bruce, not, hey, we're going to do that. I mean, that's a story unto itself. But I think he definitely needs to be given another year. As far as John Cohen as the AD at Auburn, what kind of job is he doing? Well, it hinges on one of these coaches that he hires having some sort of success, not a modicum of success, but a lot of success. Kentucky fans, they're livid. You're right. If they spent $22 million on basketball this year, that's more than the $20.5 million rev sharing. And you look around the league, other than Kentucky spending 22, Florida, I think, was under 9, is what we've been told, if it was that much. But they developed those players, and those guys don't want to leave. Thomas Hawk is from Pennsylvania. I'm not sure he was rated maybe a 2. We could talk all day about what Todd Golden's done. I had another one I got to ask you about in the SEC. How many coaches do you think won't be back? Is Chris Jans walking the Green Mile in Starkville?
I think there's a good chance that there will be a change there. That's the best thing. The best news I've heard for Auburn is that Mississippi State, from people I talk to that know that program, is pretty much ready to lock up the lockers and put the balls away and go home for the summer. So I don't know how motivated those guys are going to be. Although, of course, Josh Hubbard did drop 46 on Auburn a couple of weeks ago. 30.
They'll play the game of the year tomorrow.
Auburn is the elixir for perimeter players and their 3-point shooting, because team after team has shredded Auburn from the arc this year. No one more so than Mississippi State with Josh Hubbard in Starkville a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I think I don't know that he will definitely be gone, but look, he's well regarded in the industry. He'll get another job. He may leave for another job. That may be the way the parting happens rather than them dismissing him. That's one to watch. Obviously, LSU, I think that's almost a certainty with Matt McMahon. I think South Carolina, that's another dicey one. Those are the most likely, I think, those 4 to see coaching changes this year.
And money-wise, it's just football sucks up all the oxygen in the room, meaning it takes the bulk of the NIL money. And we talk on this show, Jason Caldwell, look at women's basketball. I mean, Jason Caldwell made a point a few weeks ago, AU Undercover, one of the best from Sylacauga, the marble capital of the world. But he said, you may only have 4 or 5 women's programs in the SEC that are truly competitive, that being South Carolina, Tennessee, LSU, and you've got to think.
Tennessee's dropped off, certainly.
Yeah, Tennessee's dropped off. And then
they're not happy with Kim Caldwell in Knoxville.
No, they're not. And you've got just, I say 4 or 5. The rest of them, it could potentially become glorified church league, parochial prep, rec ball. I mean, because the interest, you can't make people watch what they don't want to watch. And it is just a tough sell. Kevin, is it fair for me to say maybe in 5 years, schools in the SEC that have 20-plus sports might be down to 6 or 7?
I'd say that's a possibility. Although Greg Sankey did emphasize, he was on with Feinbaum yesterday talking about that roundtable, that dog and pony show that's going to accomplish nothing from last Friday.
Oh, yeah.
If you wanted to know my opinion on that.
Please tell us. That was a waste of time.
It really was. Yeah, it was a bunch of photo opportunities, I guess, if you wanted to rub elbows. I'm not sure why you would want to rub elbows with some of those people that were there, but a bunch of people did. I lost my train of thought there.
That's easy to do.
Yeah, thinking of that mess. Look, when the
makes your head
president
hurt.
when
You
the
guys need
president
conversations.
when the president has clearly no clue, drops a hint that he might want to go back to the good old days when the players only got paid under the table.
Yeah.
When he doesn't understand the Supreme Court decision in Alston versus the NCAA was not about NIL, it was about educational expenses for athletes. But the opinion of Kavanaugh basically said any other business in the country that operated the way the NCAA did would be held committing antitrust violations. So that was a useless exercise. I'm surprised people like Nick Saban involved themselves in that. I guess you can't say no if you're invited to something like that, but you have to know that just trying to frame the problem. How many times have we done that? Yeah. We already know what the issues are.
Yeah,
we know what different people's purported solutions are. It's time to get something done and stop talking about it and do something about it.
And it's not a lunch, Kevin. It's like, a 6-month retreat is going to require this. It can't. We've seen the old governor getting involved over in LSU this year. We've seen what politics get involved in this stuff. It does not make sense. That's why we don't generally put these things together, because it's never going to work out. Yeah. And I'm really curious what you thought, Kevin, about Sankey's comments in general yesterday about him just saying, but we got, we're going to make our own rules. I mean, we've been sort of talking about that for a while. Like, you're going to have to do something.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we started this this tangent on. Was Sankey did say on Feinbaum that they're not, the SEC at least, is not cutting women's programs. In fact, they've added roster spots significantly over the years. They've added revenue. They've added money to their women's sports programs. That's not a problem in the SEC. He voiced a concern that men's Olympic sports, think track and field, for example, that those are the ones that could be under the knife if they have to continue to pour all of this money into football and basketball to a lesser extent. That it's not the women's programs that are going to be in trouble, because they are very conscious of Title IX and what it requires, but the men's Olympic sports, those are the ones that might be in trouble. So we'll see how that goes as we move forward. This idea that the SEC is going to unilaterally set its own rules, does anybody believe that?
No.
Do you think they're going to put themselves at a competitive disadvantage against the Big Ten, who they're already trailing in the last, obviously, 3 straight national championships in football by the Big Ten by 3 different schools? So not, maybe not top to bottom, but certainly at the top, the SEC has fallen behind the Big Ten. They're not going to put themselves at a competitive disadvantage. They're not going to set rules on NIL, tampering, whatever it might be, that apply only to them. That's not going to happen. I find it hard to believe that would happen. Let me say that.
Yeah.
Hey,
well, look,
quick shout out real quick, Rob. Hey, One Stone Angel just checked in. We haven't heard from our guy in a while. We know he has been checked into but we just won't tell his business. But he's been fighting the good fight. We wanted to say he made a comment. Welcome back. We haven't seen you in a while, One Stone Angel. Hope you're feeling better.
Well, I agree, Brendan. I think
he says, I think the WNBA has ruined women's basketball. Look how they've treated the GOAT, Caitlin Clark. True. I just don't care.
Yeah.
To watch.
I think that, Brendan, you're right. And prayers with you, One Stone Angel, every single day. Love you. And you're right about this. That treatment of Caitlin Clark, that's just crap. And I'm going to say this about the sports. In the business world, if you have a division in a company that continues to be non-profitable, you cut it. If you don't get the right people in there, you give it maybe a couple of attempts, you get rid of them. I look at numbers. I look at everything, profitability. That's all you look at, a balance sheet. If you know how to read a balance sheet, you're going to struggle. College athletics, if you continue to have to throw money down an endless black hole of non-profitability, how can you justify it? So to sit there because of Title IX and all, South Carolina women's basketball is losing money, even though they're winning big. They've got that monster contract with Dawn Staley. That's going to be the serious discussion. But I think the worst thing they did about that group getting together in Washington was they invited them to the White House. Let's be honest. Nobody's going to stand up and bark at the president. Just like A friend of mine told me about the longer Nick Saban was at Alabama. Every time these young coaches, they would go around the room and ask for input, they'd sit on their hands. People were afraid. The only one that really ever stood up, hate him, love him, whatever, was Lane Kiffin. If you are not willing to speak your mind and tell people what you really see, then nothing gets accomplished. But Condoleezza Rice, somehow she is seen as an expert on college football because she likes college football. Why was she there? Not one current head football coach, Pete Cordelli, waxed about this yesterday. Not one athletic director. Nobody that's in the fight was there. That was a photo op and get off my lawn and yelling at the clouds. That's all it was, Kevin.
That's well put. Not only that, no current players, no representatives of current players, no agents. Whether you like it or not, agents are major players in college athletics right now. Now that's not, it's not always for the good. Not always for the good.
No.
But there are good agents.
I'm your agent. I'm going to be your agent. I'm going to be Rob's agent. I'm an agent now.
I would love Brendan because Brendan, I got the best producer in the world. We all know what he does.
Let me go negotiate your deal, Rob.
Brendan could do it, and Brendan would do it right.
Yeah. Brendan's
the problem is you've got too many people who are unscrupulous that are taking advantage of the athletes and their families because they don't know the ins and outs of this game, and that's why agents should be regulated. They are regulated in the pros. Are they not? Yes, they are.
Absolutely, they are.
They should be regulated at the college level as well.
Rob, I have a question for you then.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is for all of us. And excuse my, naivete here. But it seems to me that it's not just the NCAA, it's not just the SEC. It's each team is its individual business. So it's a conglomerate of businesses that don't have a level playing field, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's like first thing you got to do is delineate the playing field. Like we got to boil it all down and see, who, like you're playing golf. What's your handicap, right? It's like, like how do we make this fair? And I think Sankey's probably trying to just move the ball forward a little bit, to use a sports metaphor, but let's, it just seems to me that how do you get, that's what such a big move, to me. It's like you have, Florida and Auburn, all these major, huge brands, and, how do you get them all together to make sense and to make it fair, Kevin?
Well, that's the problem right there, is getting the individuals to see the greater good for the group. And that was something that Mike Slive was a master at with the SEC.
He was.
Competing interests, very different goals, different circumstances at every campus. They would go into a room and it might be 7-7. And they might bite each other's heads off and they might get heated. But when they walked out of the room, it was 14-0. Every vote was 14-0 when they walked out. And Mike could bring those different constituencies together. That's a special skill that not everyone possesses. And now you've got more schools. Now you've got 16 schools. You've got 18 in the Big Ten. You've got, 19 in the ACC, which makes it even more difficult to bring people together because you've got a larger group of competing interests. And how do you make them all see that what's good for the group might not be the best thing for each individual campus, but it's better for the group? And then how do you get the Big Ten and the SEC and the Big 12 and the ACC and the Big East in college basketball to see that what's good for the sport might be better for one conference than the other, but it's good for the sport? It's almost impossible. These are all competitive people. They all want to win. They all want to make the most money. And speaking of money, I didn't hear anybody in that room. I heard a lot of people talk about what athletes are making. I didn't hear any conversation about Nick Saban making $10, $11, $12 million a year.
Yeah.
His last half of his career at Alabama. I didn't hear anybody talk about what Greg Sankey makes.
Yeah.
A lot of people have gotten rich in college athletics, but it was always the coaches. Now, again, not forever. Nick Saban wasn't making big money back in the 80s or 90s. That was a relatively recent development. But you talk about capping player salaries, capping, rev share, all of that. But nobody's talking about capping coaches' salaries. Now, you can't do it legally, obviously, but the NCAA tried that with the limited earnings coach and that they had for a while. And it was a class action lawsuit that the NCAA ended up losing because they tried to cap the earnings at what was it, $24,000 a year or something for each individual. That didn't work. So again, that's the real problem here. People don't see the bigger picture, and that's why. And I've heard other people say this: is Greg Sankey the person that can solve all of this? No. What's his job? To do what's best for the SEC.
That's right.
What's Tony Petitti's job? Same thing with the Big Ten. If you really want to bring these people together, you need a commissioner. You need someone who is not beholden to a particular conference or a particular school, that looks out for the good of the game, whether it's football or basketball, baseball, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I asked Rick Neuheisel about that, talking to him. He's been on our show several times. And then this was at the Nick Saban Legacy Award dinner, May 7th of 2022 at The Club up on the mountain in Birmingham. I was just talking to him there. Would you want to be the commissioner? He said, yeah. You know, Rick has a law degree. Rick was going to Yale or Princeton to play football till Terry Donahue convinced him, you don't think you're good enough to come to UCLA and be my quarterback? He goes, huh? He goes, I'll see you, in LA. And he went to UCLA, rest his history. He'd be a great one. I think he'd be fantastic. Brendan knows him. He caddied for him a few times at Castle Pines. But I'm going to tell y'all something.
No, I liked how when he had his recruits in, and
he's just a cool guy.
What? I just played some guitar and had some strippers. What?
Yeah. I mean, but Rick is a cool guy that would. I think he'd be an excellent commissioner.
Cool for school sometimes.
Well, but I know he's from.
You don't lose my number, baby.
McClintock out there in Phoenix or whatever. But I think that you got to have leadership, and you look at the best companies. You have an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. I got a friend his father built a massive engineering firm. Then he ran it, and when he retired, he sold it back to his employees, and they get work like you wouldn't believe all over Arkansas and all over the place. Take care of your men first. You're right. Pete Cordelli was adamant about that. And I was talking to Pete yesterday after the show. He's going to be in South Bend. I believe Lou Holtz's funeral is next Monday in South Bend. That's the place that there'll be so many coaches there. I wonder what the discussion will be about. Could a coach like Lou Holtz make it in today's world? Would it happen? But you think about this. You're making $12 million a year, and your employees, your athletes, they got to get something. But structure helps. I think that's a big deal. Yancy, we just got a few minutes here. We're having a discussion about.
We can go long with Yancy Porter.
Okay, yeah, we'll go a little bit long with you. Yancy, thank you for joining us. I know you're a busy man. Kevin Scarbinsky, Scarbo Knows, is on here with us right now. And we've been talking about that photo op luncheon. The worst thing you can do is invite 32 people to the White House, feed them, give them drinks, cocktails, whatever. Nothing got done. Put a round top table with no chairs like they do in the Army, and it takes 5 minutes. Nobody wants to stand for 2 or 3 hours. But Rebel Yell Hotline, let's talk about your thoughts on that panel, and also Chris Beard and the future of Ole Miss basketball, whatever you want to talk about with Kevin and me.
The panel talking about with Trump?
Yeah, the 32 people.
Yeah, I think a lot of the wrong people were in place to be there. And look, I'm a Trump backer. This is nothing against Trump. I just think he selected a lot of the wrong people to be on the panel. The last thing we want to do is to give the NCAA autonomy like it was pre-NIL. That's when we go back to protecting a handful of schools, let them buy players, and then everybody else goes on probation. Players like Trinidad Chambliss don't even get a fourth year to play. Yeah. I mean, they are really hell-bent on trying to keep him from having a fourth, not a fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth or ninth, as we've seen. Yeah. We want everybody to have a fair chance to try to win championships. And the NCAA is the most corrupt organization in the history of American sports or any kind of other field you want to go into. So the last thing that I want to see is the NCAA to be protected from the courts.
Yeah. By the way, real quick before we go back to Kevin, John Hartwell and I had a long discussion with a friend of mine from college that went to Ole Miss. I wish I'd have gone to work for him in 1990, Jay Stern. We talked about you. That was one of the best phone calls. I mean, that thing should have been the 30 for 30, but you are loved by a lot of people, Yancy. Kevin, if you would respond to what Yancy just said, and we'll keep this going.
Well, that's why we may need a new governing body. You do need structure. You need someone who's in charge. You do need sensible rules. That's why I keep saying this, and this wasn't my idea. I think Dan Wetzel first suggested it, that if you want legislation, this idea that you're going to have some omnibus bill that's going to address every issue that you have in college athletics is foolish. It's never going to get through Congress. But if you had a narrow scope bill about eligibility that would allow the NCAA or whoever is in charge to set its eligibility rules, common sense rules that would apply fairly to everyone as much as possible, that has a much better chance of getting through Congress, I think, and I think a lot of people think, than, again, this idea that you're going to solve NIL and the transfer portal and eligibility and all of these things. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. You have to have a governing body. We have to have some structure. But what we've seen is we've proven, again, just because I've covered Ole Miss and know this Trinidad Chambliss case so closely, that the NCAA is still the NCAA. They're still corrupt. I mean, the kid is just trying to get his 4th year of eligibility. Yeah. He did not practice. He did not play for the full season. He had multiple illnesses, and they're saying, no, you can't play. That doesn't count. Yeah, it counted as a D2 red shirt, medical red shirt, but not as a D1 medical red shirt, which is the wrong ruling to begin with. And if I saw that the NCAA was trying to change their ways of protecting the so-called blue bloods and giving everybody else a fair chance, I would say, hey, let's give them a second chance to try to govern everybody. But they're still the same old, same old. These are lifelong people that are inside the organization, and they're a cancer, and they've always been a cancer, and I don't trust them.
I don't either. And I think the bottom line is it's about time for Brendan to put up our favorite photo. It's TJ Finley and his trials and tribulations, his journey. 7 years for the man from not Opelousas, but Ponchatoula, Louisiana. I mean, he's going to try to go for an 8th year. He's already got a degree in business marketing from Auburn, 3 children, hell of a career, different, than I think he probably thought it would be. There he is.
Is it so hard to have black and white rules?
Yeah.
Is it that hard where you have to have 80% is in the gray area where you can rule for this school or not that school?
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's like Kevin said, let's have a governed body where you have rules in place and keep it within the rules. But I think the NCAA's corruptness goes so deep, so far, so many generations that it's impossible to be able to weed through it. So we need a new governing body, and it needs to be black and white rules, no gray, and let's run with it.
Yeah.
Whatever they are.
You know what, Yancy? And along those lines, who are we asking to fix the problems? The people who created the problems.
Yep.
These commissioners who, and Greg Sankey has been on every committee, and I'm not pointing at him particularly. Well, I guess I am. He's been on every committee known to man that the NCAA has. And if they if the people in charge now had any foresight years ago to understand that you could not continue to raise coaches' salaries to $5 million, $8 million, $10 million, $12 million without compensating the players to some degree as well, they fought that tooth and nail for the longest time. And that's part of the reason now it's out of control in the other direction.
Yes.
And players are making ridiculous amounts of money. They're changing schools constantly, not always for good reasons, but also coaches are kicking guys down to the curb and saying, you might want to go somewhere else. You don't fit into our plans. And so the people who created the mess are now being charged with fixing the mess, and they know they can't fix it. So what are they doing? They're throwing a Hail Mary to Congress, asking them to help and fix it. They can't fix what chance do they have to fix much of anything?
The only way you could do that is give the NCAA antitrust exemption, and that can't happen. So why is it so hard to just have contracts? within college football, basketball, baseball, whatever sports, athletics. And it's black and white again. Once you sign a contract, you can't transfer it to another school, even if it's a 2-year contract. We see players now doing NIL revenue sharing deals with 2 years, 3 years, whatever. I mean, a contract is a contract in any American society, business, whatever you want to do it. Is that really so hard to do?
Well, you know what the NCAA reminds me of, and we've all got kids, the parents that allow their child out in a restaurant to scream and holler and throw food and throw a temper tantrum and allow that to happen. We all, at least I know growing up, I would have disappeared from the room, and that behavior would not have continued. You are they played kick the can for decades about basic health care, a pension, some type of retirement, health care, whatever. They played kick the can with it. Again, while the coaches' salaries went up here and the players weren't getting anything, legally, we all know stuff went on. It's just the way it was. But
Ed Orgeron had the best comment about the whole thing. We used to walk in the back door with the money. Now we walk in the front.
That's right. I mean, it's just the way it is. All right, guys, we're going to go a few minutes long here. I want to thank so much Brendan Martin, executive producer. 8 channels were live: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Share it, like it, subscribe. Please do that for us. You see Landers forward over my shoulder here. Got to get the S back up there. But they're at Poplar and Houston Levy, open every day except Sunday. It is truck month right now. Get out there and find out what truck month means. 90 days before your first payment. Great deals on the interest rates. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the GM. They'll help you out. Yancey, we talked about Chris Beard earlier. I'm a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of all coaches who are intense and a little bit out there. That's just my person. I love that. It seemed like he checked out on this team, but he says he's coming back next year. Talk about the current environment of basketball, because the Sandy and the Black Pavilion, what are the names? Sandy and Joe Black that have given so much money. It is incredible, that facility down there. They've got so much going on. The collective with the Grove, Walker Jones coming from all those years, 15 years at Under Armour with Kevin Plank. They've got what it takes. I can't believe they dropped the ball this year from being that close to the Elite Eight last year.
Yeah, I think Beard's learned the hard way what Ole Miss culture is about. And, let's be honest, football is 1, and there's a huge drop-off after that. And then baseball's 2 at Ole Miss, and basketball's 3. But that doesn't mean that basketball cannot get the support. But one thing, Ole Miss fans will get behind their basketball team. But once you start losing, they'll not only not go to the games, they won't even watch the games on TV. It's baseball season.
Yeah.
And he learned that the hard way. And they'll drop you. But it's a good truth serum, right? And Beard, I think it kind of took him back a little bit. I think they gave away free tickets for the very last home game. Literally, anybody could walk in, and it was a fourth full for senior night. Wow. Obviously, they had lost, 10 out of their last 11 games, 14 out of their last 16 games. But, Ole Miss fans will let you know as a basketball coach, you lose and we're done. And so that was a little bit of a eye-opener for Beard. I'm sure any school you start losing and the fans dwindle away, but in basketball, especially at Ole Miss, they'll drop you in a heartbeat. So he learned about that. And then the second thing, he's bringing in a couple 5-stars right now, and that's a little bit different than what he's been so reliant on the portal these last couple of years. He might be trying to get some high school help instead of going strictly all into the portal. We're going to see about that, how it develops with these couple 5-stars with these visits coming up. And thirdly, I think they've got a good base with Pinkins, the freshman there. I think he's as good as any freshman in the league. He was fantastic all season. Eduardo Klafke, he developed during the season. There's Tyler Jordan was a redshirt freshman that was 6'10", 240. Why he didn't play this season, nobody knows, but we hear He's just absolutely dynamic during practices, and he's going to be ready. So they're going to have a little bit of nucleus. They only brought back one of the 13 pieces for this roster this year. It was a complete rebuild. So they're going to have a few more pieces going in the next season. I think Beard is going to be very motivated. He's already publicly announced he's returning next year. I would be really surprised if you don't see a quick turnaround next season at Ole Miss in basketball.
I echo those sentiments, Kevin Scarbinsky. Scarbo knows. Watch it on this channel. One of the best podcasts in Western civilization.
I appreciate that, Rob.
It is.
Yeah, Chris Beard is too good a coach for them to be down for 2 consecutive seasons. Although I think it does point out, I'm going to put in a plug for my guy Andy Kennedy, the job that he did at Ole Miss. I don't know that Ole Miss fans appreciated the job he did while he was there. Of course, he's the winningest coach in Ole Miss history, and now he's doing incredible things at UAB.
Yeah.
And the American Conference Tournament is this week here in Birmingham. Don't be surprised. He's been to 4 consecutive conference tournament championship games in 2 different conferences. He's won 2 of them, and he's got a shot again, although he's got a squirrely team this year that can't shoot, can't do a lot of things right. But they win on the road. They're undefeated. They went undefeated on the road in the American Conference. Only one other team has ever done that, but they only won 2 home games in the conference. Lucky for them, the conference tournament is in Legacy Arena, not in Bartow Arena.
Yeah.
So looking forward to seeing Andy later in the week when they get
proud
rolling on Friday.
He is a proud native son of where? Does anybody know? I know.
Louisville.
Yeah.
Louisville, Mississippi. Not Louisville, Louisville.
Hey, we had a great
AK and Beard are actually really close. They're really close friends. Yeah.
I mean, I loved Louisville to Lake Titicaca, that Harley-Dixie Triathlon, 26. That was an awesome, awesome triathlon. Neshoba County Fair where you end up. Hey, guys, thank both of you so much for your time. Yancy Porter, Kevin Scarbinsky. For executive producer Brendan Martin, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Share it, like it, subscribe, and all of our sponsors we're so blessed to have. We'll get you guys back on. I'm going to do this again next week. This was a lot of fun. So get out today. Landers, that's Landers. The S is got to flip that back over. Landers Ford, Memphis. Also, I-240 in Mount Moriah. Open every day of the week except Sunday. And remember, they're right down the street from Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. Open every day but Sunday. Hempforpros.com, My Town Roofing. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. See you tonight.